Welcome to Jackrabbit Journal. This is the wrap on the Rabbit basketball seasons, and the Jackrabbit women earned their way into the NCAA Tournament for the sixth time in the last 7 years. Got a 14 seed this year and another tough draw against Pac-12 champion Oregon State in the first round. Our man David Brown was in Corvallis for the game.
Unfortunately for South Dakota State, it has rained both here in Corvallis and it has rained on their parade as they fall to Oregon State 74-62 in the first round of the NCAA Tournament. SDSU actually had a 2-point lead at halftime, 34-32. They came out aggressive. They were hitting on all cylinders, but in the second half they committed a lot of early turnovers, and the Canadian Hammer, Oregon State center Ruth Hamblin, took over.
I think I also just was a bit more aggressive to the rim. I knew that I needed to score for my team, so I tried to bring that. And the guards did a great job of getting me the ball, too.
Yeah, I mean, she's 6'6". Any team's going to have trouble adjusting to that.
SDSU actually got out to a decent lead, a 7-point lead in the first half off a Chloe Korneman 3, but then Oregon State came back with an 11-0 run before Macy Miller capped off the first half with a rebound of her own miss, and the Jacks actually led 34-32 at halftime.
We finished the half on a nice little push again. We went into the locker room with a 2-point lead. We talked about in the locker room how important that was to weather that little series there where we weren't scoring and get ourselves back. And we even talked about the fact that that's going to happen in the second half, and the fact that we did well with it in the first half should give us some confidence in the second half. Our start to the second half, though, just probably wasn't good enough.
As I mentioned, it was a good first half for SDSU. They were definitely the aggressors. That's what you have to do as an underdog, come out and punch Oregon State right in the mouth, and they did that early, feeding the ball inside, getting good looks on the perimeter, and as I said, they built up a 7-point lead and had a lead at halftime, and AJ even said that they wanted to come out and be the aggressors, and Oregon State head coach Scott Ruick took notice.
Very well coached, disciplined, hard-nosed, talented basketball team. We knew they would come in here swinging and try to punch us first, and they did that.
I think definitely give credit to South Dakota State. They came out, punching, and they weren't afraid of us, and they really tested us today, so we're thankful for that opportunity.
However, at the start of the second half, SDSU started committing a lot of turnovers, some very sloppy play. They got a little bit tentative on offense, and AJ even echoed those sentiments after the game.
I thought we just maybe a little passive offensively. Their defense is good. It's not like it's really easy to get layups. You know, they do a good job of taking some things away.
I just feel like we came out very passive, and we weren't getting those shots to the rim like we were the first half, and we had some crucial turnovers, and they were getting some good looks.
Oregon State started feeding the ball a lot more to Hamblin in the second half, a lot of high-low action, and Mariah Claren and Clarissa Ober each got in the foul trouble trying to defend her. The Jacks tried sending 2, sometimes 3 different defenders at Hamblin, but it was not enough as she scored 10 points during an early OSU run in the second half.
We fronted some, we played behind some, we trapped some. We really had 3 ways and that we approached it. And then, to be honest with you, we did a pretty good job on her. I know she's still at 17. A lot of those were late, and she's just an awfully good player. There's no real formula for stopping her. At least no one's really found one this year. I thought our team did a pretty good job.
The Jacks started to find their offensive groove a little bit in the second half, but unfortunately at that point, Oregon State had already built a double-digit lead. SDSU could not really get much closer, and Sydney Weiss, Oregon State's leading scorer, had a lot to do with that.
She's really good at coming off of ball screens and then coming off a ball screen and then coming off a ball screen. So she'll do it 2 or 3 times in a possession, and you get caught chasing her, and eventually she gets you underneath one, and boom, she hits it.
South Dakota State should be definitely proud of how they fought today, and they're going to be tough to face in the next couple of years.
In my opinion, despite the 12-point difference in the final score, 74-62, I felt this was the Jacks' best performance in an NCAA tournament game since their initial appearance in 2009 when they actually won their first-round game against TCU. And the reason I think that is because in those other games over the years against Oklahoma, Xavier, South Carolina, Purdue, it seemed like the Jacks never were really competitive except for a lone stretch in the early first half. In this one, they completely had control in the first half. They withstood an OSU run. They came back, they fought back, they got the lead. It's just in the second half they got a little tentative and they started committing some sloppy turnovers, and you can't do that against any team, let alone the Pac-12 regular season champions. And that youth culture is going to foster some experience, which hopefully can get the Jacks past the first round in the years to come.
That's all we talked about afterwards. Not so much even for moving forward, but just an appreciation for the team. They overcame a lot this year. We had a lot of injuries and just a lot of things that were challenges that every team goes through, but we had a lot of them this year. And I was just really proud of how they stayed focused and competed and put an awful lot into this to make us a really good team this year. So if some of that translates into success in the future, then that's great.
This is a great experience for us. We're a young team, and coming in here and getting some experience, it'll really help us for the future. And I just want to thank the seniors for everything, and it's been a great year.
We've proven that we can compete with the best, and that's why we're here. That's why we play for the Jackrabbits, because we want to be the best. And I think they have the opportunity to play, with the best, and I think they're going to do that.
Mariah nailed it.
All right, thanks, David. Up next, Brad Newitt is in. We will take a look at who's moving on, who's coming back for the Jackrabbit women next year.
Jackrabbit Journal on Midco Sports Network is presented by Billionauto.com.
All right, welcome back to Jackrabbit Journal. We are at the big board here for this segment. We're going to talk a little bit about the women who just ended their season with 24 wins against 9 losses on the season, Newitt. And before we get to who's leaving and who's coming back for next year, let's talk about this, the seeding process and where the Jackrabbits have been seeded and how that has affected how they've played in the tournaments. You look at this year, 14 seed, lost to Oregon State. 2 years ago, after they missed the tournament in 04, or 14. 13 seed, and you see the pattern here. You got to go down to 2009, one of the first year, I think the first year they were eligible. They came into the tournament with 31 wins, and that got them that 7 seed, and they beat TCU by 45 points in the first round, and then lost to Baylor, another game they should have won. But just talk about this right here and how that can get better for the Jackrabbits.
Well, one thing you got to look at first of all is in all of these games that they've lost, they've had to play at home sites to all these teams they've played. And that's one of the first things. You're not playing a neutral site game in the women's tournament when you're a 14, a 13, a 15 seed. If you're one of the top 4 seeds in a region in the women's tournament, you get to host those first 2 games. So like this year, South Dakota State had to go out and play at Oregon State. Those are much tougher games, let alone you're playing a high-quality team, probably a team that's ranked in the top 20, and you got to play on their home floor. The big advantage, of course, in 2009, sure, South Dakota State had a quality team, probably maybe arguably Aaron Johnson's best team he's ever had there, but they got to play a neutral site game against TCU, and they win that. So one of the things that South Dakota State has to do is see if you can get into that 12 seed line. You get into that 12 seed, now you're playing a 5 on a neutral floor. That would be a huge step for South Dakota State. In my opinion, it really starts with the Summit League as a whole. Can the Summit League raise their kind of prestige and RPI as a league and as a conference? That would help the champion out of the Summit League maybe get a little bit of a higher seed.
Would that really make that big a difference? And even if it does, is that a one boost? Does that bump us up one spot? Or
it might, and really that might be all that you need. I think South Dakota State getting a 14 this year was a lot on some of their non-conference losses. Against other tournament teams, they didn't fare real well. They got beat bad at DePaul. They lose to Wisconsin Green Bay at Frost Arena. Those are 2 tournament teams right there that if South Dakota State plays better, maybe beats Green Bay at Frost, maybe this is now a 13, and then you're knocking on the door of getting that 12 and playing a neutral site game.
All right. And even if you're 12, you're still playing a 5. There's 4 regions. You're still playing a top 20.
You are.
Get up there maybe to a 10 or an 11. That's where we got to get. And it's still – you're going to have to win 28, 29, 30 games to get to that higher seed.
And you are, and that's going to be tough the way Aaron Johnson schedules because he loves to play quality non-conference. I don't know if you've peeked ahead to next year. They have Notre Dame coming to Frost Arena. They have DePaul coming to Frost Arena. Those are going to be 2 high-level games. If South Dakota State can find a way to win one of those 2, that would really boost them nationally in the RPI.
All right, and I know they love the challenge of playing these big-time power teams, but we'll see in the coming years if the Jacks and the rest of the league, as you said, can help them out with the scheduling. All right, 24 wins this year. Here's what's coming back in 15-16 as we take a look ahead to the Jackrabbit women. You get these 4 players are gone, either going to graduate or move on. Witashik and Claren and Walters averaged about 29 points and 13 rebounds a game between those 3. Megan Stewart was hurt out most of the season. She's going to move on and pursue her school and her dual degree there. So those players gone. Gabby Bover, we've been told by Aaron Johnson, is going to try to get a 6th season. She redshirted as a freshman, played for 3 years, and then was out this season again with an injury. And we'll see if the NCAA will grant her another season.
Yeah, that's all in the NCAA's court right now. So South Dakota State, now that the season's over, can apply for that 6th year. It's kind of a hardship situation. Will be up to the NCAA. Kind of the tough thing for South Dakota State, they may not know on that, Tom, until summertime. Mm-hmm. And so I think they'll probably go forward assuming and hoping that Gabby Bover is playing for them next year. If they do, You're bringing a very experienced guard back into the mix, a great defender that can run the point, and that maybe moves Macy Miller off that position a little bit more. Maybe lets her get into more of a role on the team where she can really focus on being a scorer.
Speaking of Miller this year, 453 points that she scored this year, a new freshman record for Macy Miller in her first season at South Dakota State, and she's not going to slow down, you don't think?
No, I mean, she didn't play like a freshman most of that year, and then on top of that, like I just mentioned, had to take on the point guard role with Gabby Bover not able to play this year, and you got to think, I mean, going forward, Macy Miller is really poised to have maybe one of the best careers ever of a player at South Dakota State on the women's side.
All right, yeah, you've talked about Bover's defense all year in the games that we've done. So you got Chloe Cornerman coming back as well, had a nice run toward the end of the season, especially in the Summer League tournament for the Jacks. This is a very good class as well. Ober and Young and Stevens all coming back as juniors. Lexi Alexander, Ellie Thompson got into that starting role this year. Tiff Flatus in that sophomore class. Caitlin Severin from Pierce, South Dakota, sat out this year. She'll be a redshirt freshman. And then you get into this incoming class, and here's what the Jacks have coming in. Jessica Miras, 6'3" from Sioux Falls O'Gorman. Cindy Palmer from Pierce, South Dakota, was named the South Dakota Player of the Year. Maddie Giebert is a player out of Eastview High School, Apple Valley, Minnesota. Her mom was a great player at Augustana, and she's coming to the Jackrabbits at 5'8", but a great shooter. They finished second in the 4A state tournament this year. They won it last year, and she's one of the players that they're really looking forward to. Yeah, and she's ranked very high in the ESPN rankings, I think top 40 player. So, I mean, Aaron Johnson's got a great player coming in that a lot of high major schools were trying to go after. And I think, you know, you look at the young players he continues to bring into this program, and if they're good enough, he'll insert them right away in the lineup. We saw that with Macy Miller, Ellie Thompson here this year. They had significant roles on this team, and that might be the same case for Gabert. Annabelle Gretinger out of Muscatine, Iowa, the other player they've got coming in. So what do the Jackrabbits need for next season to get them to 28 wins? I think there's plenty of talent on this board. The question now becomes leadership, because you're losing a great one in Megan Watashik. And really, she was the leader of this program in my mind the last couple of years. I mean, really took over the reins, was the go-to player, very high IQ basketball player. Who can, you know, kind of step into that role? Is Macy Miller ready to do that as a sophomore? Maybe so. Gabby Bover coming back potentially as a senior. That's a key thing there too. But who takes over kind of that leadership role, I think, is really the key thing for South Dakota State and their women's program taking a big step next year. All right, when we come back, we will break down the SDSU men's roster a little bit later, but up next, the Jackrabbit men make a run at the postseason, a win and a loss in the NIT.
Jackrabbit Journal on Midco Sports Network is presented by BillionAuto.com.
Welcome back to Jack Journal. The National Invitational Tournament gets a bad rap, but it gives a lot of very good men's basketball teams like South Dakota State a chance to play and prove themselves at least one more time. And for the Jacks, it was a chance to play and beat a team that was already getting a lot of national attention. Colorado State won 27 games this year, but the Rams were left out of the NCAA tournament, and supposedly the scenario in the first round of the NIT was that CSU would take out their frustrations on SDSU. But the Jacks didn't want to go along with that storyline. SDSU was as sharp as those sweet new shoes. Reed Tellinghusen with a three-pointer, Jacks up 15-7. George Marshall with a three, Jacks up 21-9. SDSU hit 7 threes in the first half, and the Jacks take a 47-38 lead at halftime. Second half, Marshall stays hot. He scores 24. Jacks lead by 16 in the second half. Cody Larson on the assist from Marshall, and the Jackrabbits get a huge win for a young Division I program, 86-76 over Colorado State. So on to Nashville, and a tilt with Vanderbilt in the second round. Lane Severin hits a couple of threes, and Cody Larson with 18 points and 10 rebounds. But Vanderbilt shoots 58% for the game, 82% in the second half. The Commodores make 12 threes. They go on a 16-0 run late in the second half, and the SDSU season comes to a close with a 92-77 loss to Vandy. All right, up next, what about the future, or at least the next year for the Jackrabbit men? A look ahead to who is coming back and who is coming in.
Jackrabbit Journal on Midco Sports Network is presented by BillionAuto.com.
All right, welcome back again to Jackrabbit Journal with Brad Newitt, and let's talk about the SDSU men and what is in store for 15-16. But first, 24 wins this year. Did this surprise you at all that they were able to secure 12-4 in the co-champs in the Summit League?
It really did, considering how many new players they had in their program this year. You're looking at DeAndre Parks and then George Marshall not getting eligible to the semester, and I thought, South Dakota State had a fabulous Summit League season. Rough beginning, lose their first 2 games, and then reel off all those wins in between there. I thought very good regular season for them, without a doubt.
I was not shocked by this either. Were you?
I was a little surprised just because of the quality of team that they had to go out and play in Colorado State. That was a fabulous win. I mean, Colorado State, a lot of people really felt like they belonged in the NCAA tournament, didn't get in. But South Dakota State, I mean, they really, turned what was kind of a tough situation, losing that Summit League tournament final to North Dakota State the way they did, got the emotions back going the right way, big road win.
And then Vanderbilt, you're talking about how the setup there is at that arena where you've got the benches on the end of the floor, and in the second half, South Dakota State was playing on basically Vanderbilt's end of the floor. Did that make a difference?
I kind of wonder about that because South Dakota State's defense was not in front of their bench. So it's very difficult as a coaching staff to communicate to your defense. They're clear on the other end of the floor. I don't know if that had anything to do with Vanderbilt only missing 4 shots in the second half, but I mean, you want to talk about an avalanche that just happened and South Dakota State couldn't overcome it.
All right, Jacks ended up 24-11. Let's take a look at next season for the South Dakota State men. And Cody Larson, Zach Horseman, the kid from Winter, South Dakota, Cody from Sioux Falls, 18 points, almost 10 rebounds a game between those two. But 75% of all of the scoring coming back. You got 94% of all the three-point shots made all year coming back. And the senior class with Parks and Marshall and Jay Biddle and Moffitt, Corey Jacobson's in there as well. That's pretty solid.
Yeah, you're not going to find a more solid backcourt and guard tandem in DeAndre Parks and George Marshall, maybe at the mid-major level. So South Dakota State's got great experience there. They've all played together now for a year, and so, I mean, great things looking ahead there. I think the big thing is you're losing Cody Larson, and a lot of people maybe talk about his scoring and rebounding, but remember, he was the defensive player of the year in the Summit League. I think that is the thing where South Dakota State's going to have to try to get an answer. How do they guard the basket and the paint the way they did with Cody Larson this year? The
heir apparent, everybody thinks, is Ian Tyson coming in for Cody Larson, but he's kind of a different player, isn't he? He's not really a back-to-the-basket player like Larson?
Probably not offensively. Yeah, I think Tyson's would prefer to face up a little bit more. And Tyson not as athletic as Larson. So I think when you get back to that defensive end, how will Tyson be able to handle guarding in the post? But talking about a kid, though, as a freshman, we saw a lot of great improvement out of Tyson throughout the year. I think he really came along. He is poised to maybe step into that starting role. I think his offseason is going to be huge.
All right, Mike Dahm is another kid at 6'9", that redshirted this year. But again, you go through that senior class with those 4 coming back, played a lot of minutes this year with Corey Jacobson. Came out this week on Twitter, like all news does, that Anders Broman sounds like he is going to be leaving the program, was released from his scholarship, and will be looking elsewhere to play.
And I think maybe that wasn't unexpected just because, he was a player that played a fair amount his freshman year, didn't get to see a lot of time, and honestly, South Dakota State kind of recruited over him. I mean, DeAndre Parks, George Marshall, both all-conference players this year in the Summit League. And so there's just not enough minutes always to go around for all these players.
All right, sophomore class. Flatten got some minutes this year. Lane Severin, very strong. Both those kids about 6'6". Telling Hughes obviously was very good. So was Tyson. Logan Doyle in that class. Very good sophomore class.
Yeah, that's a great sophomore class. And that's really the foundation going forward that South Dakota State's building on. I mean, you've got great players with great size and athleticism and length, and that kind of reminds you back to the teams that were, kind of the types of teams that Scott Nagy put together a few years ago.
All right, another kid they're bringing in, 2 guys that are for sure, we believe for sure coming in right now. Adam Dykman, another kid at 6'7", out of Bergen Catholic High School down in Fremont, Nebraska. And then just about a week and a half ago, a kid from Geneva, Illinois, just kind of west Chicago area. At 5'10", a shooter, Cole Gentry, said that he's coming to play for the Jackrabbits too.
And, those are good young players. Again, Dykman with great size. Gentry, you got to think he's a kid they're going to try to groom to fit into those guard positions after Parks and Marshall graduate.
All right, getting some good recruiting avenues going in Chicago. Brian Cooley, one of the assistants from the Omaha area, does nice down there in Nebraska as well.
Yeah, they've done a great job of recruiting where they need to. And it's always going to be in the Midwest. Wisconsin's another area where South Dakota State's had some nice success as well finding players.
All right, last thing quick. Jack's biggest need going into next season?
I think, again, it's answering the question of how they defend in the paint. with Broman leaving, if there's another scholarship freed up somewhere, I could see them looking for maybe an experienced post to try to come alongside Ian Tyson. If not, you also have Connor Devine in the program. Can he take the steps necessary to be a contributor next year as well?
All right, looking forward to it. Thanks, Newitt.
You betcha.
All right, up next on Jackrabbit Journal, there are pro football scouts in Brookings this week. Taking a look at Zach Zenner and a handful of other Jackrabbit prospects on Pro Day at South Dakota State.
Jackrabbit Journal on Midco Sports Network is presented by Billionauto.com.
Pro football scouts will take over the new indoor facility at South Dakota State on Wednesday morning as the Jackrabbits host a Pro Day workout session. They expect about 10 to 15 players from around the state to take part. SDSU defensive end Jack Sherlock and safety Melvin Tavares are on that list of players, and so are Zach Zenner and Justin Sirovatka. Now, Sirovatka could be a guy to keep an eye on in the NFL free agent signings this spring. He set 10 school records this past season, made 19 out of 20 field goals, including a school record 16 in a row, and he ends up his career with 309 points. That's 114 more than Adam Vinatieri left with when he graduated in 1994. Justin Sirovatka has a shot, is all I'm saying. So does Zach Zenner, obviously. Here are the numbers again from the NFL Combine for Zenner. Great in the 40 and the bench and the vertical leap. No doubts about his physical abilities. He and the other Jackrabbit prospects will go through some drills and some testing and interviews on Wednesday in Brookings, and then let their agents go to work. The NFL draft starts this year on Thursday, April 30th. That is it this season. We will see you next fall on Jackrabbit Journal.